What if I told you that right now, in the same state where luxury condos touch the sky, you can buy a home for less than the price of a used car? Sounds impossible, right? But it's true. There are hidden corners of Florida where homes go for $20,000 or even less, and most people don't even know they exist. While Miami, Tampa, and Orlando are battling skyrocketing home prices, small forgotten towns scattered across northern and central Florida tell a completely different story. Places like Perry, Palatka, and Chattahoochee are selling homes for prices that seem straight out of the 1990s. Not because they're falling apart, but because the spotlight has shifted. As developers chase profits near the coast, these inland areas have been left behind, frozen in time. Yet, they still have working schools, quiet streets, and communities that actually know their neighbors. The truth is, Florida's cheap towns aren't broken. They're overlooked. Many were once thriving railroad or lumber hubs, full of jobs and families. When industries moved away, people followed, and home values collapsed. But the bones of those towns remain: power lines, schools, and land that's still livable and full of charm. And now, with the rise of remote work, people are realizing they don't have to live near a beach to enjoy Florida's sunshine. They can live cheaply, breathe clean air, and own property for a fraction of the cost. The opportunity is real, but it won't stay this way forever. Once investors catch on, prices will shoot up like they always do. So before you laugh at a $19,000 home listing, remember, cheap doesn't mean worthless. It means forgotten potential. Somewhere out there in a quiet Florida street with oak trees and old porches sits a home that could be your start. The same way Miami once looked like a risk, these towns are about to write their own comeback story. If you love discovering hidden real estate opportunities and learning why the housing market is shifting in ways nobody's talking about, subscribe to Housing Troubles for more videos like this. We break down the truth behind America's housing markets, where the cracks are showing and where the next opportunities are rising. Don't just watch the housing story unfold. Be part of the few who see what's coming before everyone else does. Florida's population is booming, so why are some towns practically giving homes away? It doesn't make sense at first glance. In a state where waterfront condos sell for millions, you can still find entire houses for the price of a few months' rent. But once you dig deeper, the picture becomes clear. These towns aren't broken or abandoned. They're simply out of the spotlight. While everyone flocks to Miami, Tampa, and Orlando, hundreds of inland communities remain overlooked. They don't have the beaches or flashy nightlife, but they do have peace, space, and some of the most affordable homes in the country. It's a combination of geography, economics, and perception. Many of these towns were built decades ago when Florida was expanding inland, and now they sit far from the tourism and coastal industries that drive today's demand. Because big developers see no quick profit, construction slows down and prices stagnate. Over time, locals move toward bigger cities for work, leaving behind properties that drop in value simply due to low demand. But here's the twist. These homes are often structurally sound and located in safe, quiet neighborhoods. They're just underappreciated. Low property taxes and minimal competition keep prices low, creating a strange contrast. A state famous for real estate gold has entire pockets where you can still buy a house for $20,000 or less. And while many dismiss these areas as too rural or too slow, that perception is shifting fast. Remote work has changed everything. People are realizing they can live anywhere, and that means smaller Florida towns are suddenly back on the map. Investors have already started noticing. Quiet purchases, small renovations, and gradual price increases are happening under the radar. History has shown this pattern before. The places everyone ignores today become the hot spots everyone fights for tomorrow. So when you see those unbelievably cheap listings, don't just scroll past them in disbelief. They're not scams. They're signals, early signs of opportunity in a state where affordability seems extinct. Today's $20,000 home could be tomorrow's six-figure property. The question isn't whether these towns will rise again. It's whether you'll realize it before the rest of the world does. Look at a map of Florida's cheapest homes, and you'll notice something strange. They all cluster in the same hidden pattern. From the Panhandle down to the state's inland heart, small towns line up almost perfectly, like forgotten dots on a treasure map. Towns such as Lake City, Quincy, and Palatka once thrived during Florida's industrial rise. They were railroad stops, lumber hubs, and agricultural centers that built much of the state's early economy. But when industries shifted to the coast and tourism took over, these places fell silent. People moved away, jobs disappeared, and home values crashed. Yet, the foundation of these towns never vanished. Roads, schools, parks, and power grids still exist, quietly waiting for life to return. What's fascinating is how this cycle keeps repeating itself. Every boom town in Florida's history started as a place no one cared about. Then a small wave of early investors arrived, prices rose, and suddenly everyone wanted in. The same pattern is quietly forming again. Only this time it's fueled by remote workers, retirees, and investors looking for affordability in a state that's running out of it. When you drive through these areas, you'll see it. Boarded up homes next to newly painted ones. Local diners reopening, and for sale signs disappearing faster than before. It's the first spark of revival. People are starting to realize that these towns offer something coastal cities can't. Space, safety, and the chance to actually own property without drowning in debt. The pattern no one talks about is this. Every market crash creates its own comeback, and Florida's inland towns are next in line. It's history repeating itself in real time, right beneath everyone's noses. So while the headlines scream about housing crises and skyrocketing prices, the real story is unfolding in quiet streets and small towns, where the next Florida boom is already beginning. You see a home listed for $19,000, and your first thought is, it has to be a scam. But what if it's not? What if too cheap is just misunderstood potential? Across Florida, there are towns filled with homes that seem impossibly affordable, not because they're falling apart, but because time passed them by. These aren't abandoned shacks in the middle of nowhere. They're real houses in real communities where the world simply stopped paying attention. Many of these towns haven't seen updated property valuations in decades. Locals often sell quickly, eager to move closer to cities or retire somewhere new. To outsiders, a $20,000 price tag screams problem. But in reality, it's often a reflection of a market that hasn't caught up with modern demand. A lot of these homes have good structure, decent land, and are located near essential amenities. The misconception comes from a single word, cheap. People mistake it for worthless, when really it means overlooked. In fact, investors who know what they're doing are quietly taking advantage. They're buying these homes, making simple renovations, and watching values multiply within just a few years. A property that costs less than a new car today could easily become a six-figure asset tomorrow. It's happened before, and it's happening again, especially as people search for affordable housing in a state that's pricing them out of major cities. So before you scroll past another too good to be true listing, pause for a second. Ask yourself why it's so cheap, and whether the reason is really what you think. Maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's just ignored. Florida has a long history of reinventing itself, and the places that seem forgotten today might be the ones everyone's fighting over next. The myth isn't that these homes are too cheap. The myth is believing cheap means they have no value. While outsiders scroll through listings of cheap Florida homes and wonder what's wrong with them, locals already know the truth. These places aren't dying. They're surviving in their own quiet way. Beyond the low prices and small-town charm, there's something real that big cities have long lost: community. In towns most people overlook, neighbors still stop to talk, shop owners still know your name, and life moves just slow enough to actually feel it. These aren't places filled with empty houses. They're filled with people who still believe in rebuilding, in keeping things simple, in living without pretending. It's easy to mistake slow for stagnant. But walk through these towns and you'll see something stirring. Old homes being painted again, lights flickering back on in long-closed stores, and a quiet pride returning to streets that once felt forgotten. Investors and newcomers might see numbers, but locals see home. They know the schools, the routines, the rhythms of the seasons. They know that these towns may not look like much on a map, but they hold something rare, a genuine sense of belonging. Many of these places were once thriving communities before the spotlight shifted to the coasts. Now, they're becoming sanctuaries for people who want peace over prestige, simplicity over stress. What outsiders call cheap, locals call freedom. The freedom to live without crushing rent, without endless traffic, without noise drowning out your thoughts. The truth is, the Florida most people dream about isn't gone. It just moved inland. It's waiting in quiet neighborhoods under old oak trees, beside lakes that never make it into travel magazines. Locals already know what the rest of the world is starting to remember. Sometimes the best places aren't the loudest or the richest. They're the ones that stay true to themselves no matter how much the world changes. These towns aren't fading away. They're finally being seen for what they've always been: Florida's hidden heartbeat.